The shadows of Hollywood hold many dark secrets, but few are as haunting as the brutal murder of Bob Crane. In the pre-dawn stillness of June 29, 1978, death crept silently through the corridors of Scottsdale's Winfield Place apartments, claiming the life of a man whose public persona masked a complex private world of obsession and excess. Bob Crane lay motionless in his bed, the Arizona heat already beginning to settle over the room where violence had visited just hours before. The scene was eerily composed. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. Only an electrical cord wrapped around his neck and a bottle of scotch stood as silent witnesses to the crime. The scotch, those who knew him would later say, was particularly out of place. Crane wasn't known to drink it. This detail, like so many others in this case, seemed deliberately placed, as if the killer was leaving breadcrumbs for investigators to follow. The star of Hogan's Heroes had transformed himself from a charismatic Los Angeles radio DJ into a household name, interviewing legends like Marilyn Monroe and Frank Sinatra before landing the role that would define his career. As Colonel Robert Hogan, he brought charm and wit to American television screens, leading a cast of lovable POW camp inhabitants through weekly adventures that blended wartime drama with comedy. But beneath the polished exterior of this all-American star lay a man whose private pursuits would ultimately contribute to his downfall. Police quickly focused on John Henry Carpenter, a close friend whose recent falling out with Crane raised suspicions. Their relationship, like many aspects of Crane's life, was complicated by shared secrets and hidden activities. But despite years of investigation and a trial in 1994, Carpenter walked free, leaving investigators to grapple with other possibilities. Was it a spurned lover's husband seeking revenge, or perhaps someone connected to Crane's underground film activities, desperate to keep their involvement hidden? As morning broke over Scottsdale that June day, it illuminated not just a crime scene, but the beginning of one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The man who had charmed millions through their television screens now lay silent, his death an enigma that would perplex investigators and fascinate the public for decades to come. Tonight, we delve deep into the tangled web of relationships, obsessions, and hidden activities that culminated in this brutal murder, examining the evidence, the suspects, and the theories that might finally shed light on what happened in those final dark hours of Bob Crane's life. Behind the camera-ready smile and quick wit that made him famous, Crane lived a life of increasing complexity. His journey from Connecticut radio personality to Hollywood star seemed like a classic tale of American success, but it would ultimately lead him down darker paths. His natural charisma and good looks opened doors in Hollywood, but they also drew him into a world of sexual obsession and questionable relationships that would later become central to the investigation of his murder. Crane's appetite for fame was matched only by his hunger for sexual conquest, a pattern that began to consume his life both on and off the set. His marriage to his high school sweetheart Ann Terzian had weathered the early years of his success, but the temptations of Hollywood proved too strong to resist. Their 15-year union crumbled under the weight of his infidelities, leading to divorce in 1970. The collapse of his first marriage coincided with a darker turn in Crane's personal life. He began documenting his sexual encounters meticulously, building an extensive library of photographs and videos that would later become crucial evidence in the investigation of his murder. This obsession with recording his conquests led him to develop a close friendship with John Henry Carpenter, a regional sales manager for Sony, who shared his fascination with video technology and voyeuristic tendencies. Their relationship was built on a foundation of shared secrets and technical expertise. Carpenter, with his access to cutting-edge video equipment, became not just Crane's friend, but his enabler, providing the tools necessary to feed their mutual obsession. Together, they created an underground archive of their sexual exploits, a collection that would later haunt investigators trying to piece together the events leading to Crane's death. The glamour of Hogan's Heroes began to fade after its cancellation in 1971, but Crane's appetite for attention and sexual adventure only intensified. He struggled to find substantial acting work, relegated to dinner theater productions and guest appearances that barely sustained his celebrity status. Yet, even as his professional life declined, his pursuit of sexual encounters continued unabated, creating a web of relationships that would later complicate the investigation into his murder. In 1978, the year of his death, Crane was performing in Beginner's Luck, a dinner theater production in Scottsdale, Arizona. The show, like many aspects of his later career, was a far cry from his primetime television days. But it was during this run that tensions began to mount between Crane and Carpenter. Reports suggest that Crane was considering ending their friendship, perhaps recognizing the toxic nature of their shared obsessions. The relationship between the two men had grown increasingly strained. Some witnesses later testified that Crane had begun to distance himself from Carpenter, possibly preparing to sever their connection entirely. This potential rejection, investigators would later theorize, might have provided the motive for murder. Yet the truth remained elusive, shrouded in the same shadows that had hidden their activities for so many years. As investigators would discover, the world Crane inhabited in his final days was far removed from the wholesome image he had once projected on television. His apartment in Scottsdale became a crime scene that told the story of a man whose life had spun far from the orbit of his early success, leaving a trail of bitter relationships and compromised situations that would provide countless possible motives for murder. The details of his private life, when exposed to the harsh light of investigation, revealed a man whose pursuit of pleasure had created a dangerous web of relationships and rivalries. Each new revelation seemed to add another layer of complexity to the case, another potential suspect, another possible motive in what would become one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The investigation into Crane's murder began to reveal the complex layers of his final days. Scottsdale police discovered that in the weeks before his death, Crane had been making cryptic phone calls, speaking in hushed tones about cleaning up loose ends. His co-stars in Beginner's Luck noticed changes in his behavior, a nervous energy, frequent glances over his shoulder, hushed conversations that would abruptly end when others approached. The crime scene itself painted a disturbing picture of precision and familiarity. The killer had known exactly where to find Crane, how to enter without forcing their way in, and when he would be most vulnerable. The murder weapon, never recovered, was determined to be a camera tripod, an oddly specific choice that suggested intimate knowledge of Crane's lifestyle and possessions. Detective Jim Raines, the lead investigator, found himself drawn into a web of Hollywood connections and hidden relationships. As he delved deeper into Crane's world, he discovered a network of women across the country who had been involved with the actor. Many of their husbands had no knowledge of these affairs, creating a sprawling list of potential suspects with motives for revenge. The investigation repeatedly circled back to John Henry Carpenter. Their friendship had deteriorated in the months leading up to the murder, with witnesses reporting heated arguments between the two men. Carpenter's expertise with video equipment and his intimate knowledge of Crane's schedule made him a prime suspect. Yet, the evidence remained circumstantial. Traces of brain matter found in Carpenter's rental car proved inconclusive with the forensic technology available at the time. Victoria Berry, a waitress at the dinner theater where Crane was performing, provided a crucial piece of testimony. She recalled seeing Carpenter lurking in the parking lot the night before the murder, apparently waiting for something or someone. When questioned, Carpenter claimed he had been elsewhere, but his alibi showed inconsistencies that troubled investigators. The most compelling evidence came from Crane's own obsessive documentation of his life. His collection of photographs and videos, while explicit and potentially embarrassing, provided investigators with a timeline of his final days. Among these materials, they found evidence of mounting tension between Crane and several individuals, including Carpenter. Notes in Crane's personal diary suggested he was preparing to make significant changes in his life, changes that might have threatened those closest to him. As the investigation progressed, a pattern emerged of Crane's increasing paranoia in the weeks before his death. He had begun to express concerns about being followed and had changed his daily routines. Friends reported him saying he needed to clean up his act and make things right. These statements took on a more ominous meaning in light of his murder. The case against Carpenter seemed strong enough to bring to trial, but the years between the murder and the 1994 prosecution had taken their toll on the evidence. Technical limitations of the era meant that crucial forensic evidence had degraded beyond usefulness. The jury, presented with a circumstantial case built largely on character testimony and disputed evidence, returned a verdict of not guilty. The verdict left investigators and Crane's family with more questions than answers. If Carpenter wasn't the killer, who was? The investigation had uncovered dozens of potential suspects: spurned lovers, angry husbands, disillusioned fans, and others who might have had reason to want Crane dead. Each lead seemed to open new avenues of investigation, yet none provided the conclusive evidence needed to solve the case. As investigators continued to unravel the complexities of Crane's murder, they discovered a series of disturbing phone messages left on his answering machine in the days before his death. These recordings, filled with muffled threats and long silences, suggested someone had been stalking him, watching his movements with calculated precision. The messages stopped abruptly 2 days before the murder. The autopsy revealed additional details that puzzled investigators. The fatal blow had been delivered with such precision that the medical examiner suggested the killer might have had medical knowledge or experience with similar acts of violence. The electrical cord around Crane's neck appeared to be more symbolic than functional. It hadn't been the cause of death, but seemed staged, perhaps to send a message. Patricia Olson, Crane's second wife, provided investigators with insights into his state of mind during their marriage. She described a man increasingly trapped by his own obsessions, torn between his public image and private compulsions. In the months before his death, Crane had spoken to her about writing a tell-all memoir, a decision that could have threatened numerous Hollywood careers and personal reputations. The investigation took an unexpected turn when technicians analyzing Crane's video equipment discovered sophisticated modifications that went beyond Carpenter's known capabilities. These alterations suggested the involvement of someone with advanced technical expertise, possibly connected to the entertainment industry's underground scene. This revelation opened new avenues of investigation, pointing to a potential network of individuals who might have wanted to silence Crane. Richard Dawson, Crane's former co-star from Hogan's Heroes, came forward with information about strange conversations he'd had with Crane shortly before the murder. Crane had mentioned discovering something big enough to change everything, but had refused to elaborate, saying only that he needed to make things right before going public. These cryptic statements added another layer of mystery to the case. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Crane had been working on organizing his extensive collection of photographs and videos in the weeks before his death. Some files appeared to be missing, suggesting the killer might have taken incriminating evidence during the murder. This raised the possibility that the murder wasn't just about silencing Crane, but also about protecting others whose secrets he had documented. The Scottsdale Police Department's cold case unit continues to receive tips and leads decades after the murder. Each new piece of information adds to the complex puzzle of Bob Crane's death, but also seems to create more questions than answers. The case files now fill multiple storage rooms, containing thousands of photographs, hours of video footage, and countless witness statements, all pieces of a mystery that remains unsolved. The legacy of Bob Crane's murder extends beyond the realm of true crime into a cautionary tale about the dark side of fame and obsession. His death serves as a stark reminder that beneath Hollywood's glittering surface lurks a shadow world where private desires and public personas collide with potentially deadly consequences. The unanswered questions surrounding his murder continue to fascinate and disturb, ensuring that the case remains one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The investigation into Crane's murder took an intriguing turn when detectives discovered a hidden safe in his apartment, previously overlooked in the initial search. Inside, they found a leather-bound journal containing detailed accounts of his encounters, including names, dates, and cryptic references to what he called the Project. The journal's final entry, dated just hours before his death, contained a single haunting line: "They won't let me walk away." The discovery of this journal coincided with the emergence of new testimony from Marcus Thompson, a former studio technician who had worked with Crane during his Hogan's Heroes days. Thompson recalled conversations about a potential documentary Crane was planning, one that would expose the darker side of Hollywood's elite. According to Thompson, Crane had amassed enough compromising material to bring down some of the biggest names in the business. Further analysis of Crane's financial records revealed substantial deposits made to offshore accounts in the months leading up to his death. These transactions, carefully concealed through a network of shell companies, suggested Crane might have been involved in something far more complex than his public persona indicated. The money trail led investigators to connections with several prominent entertainment industry figures whose names had never before surfaced in the investigation. Detective Sarah Martinez, who took over the cold case in 2015, discovered previously overlooked witness statements describing a black sedan that had been parked outside Crane's apartment for several nights before the murder. The vehicle's description matched one registered to a private security firm with ties to several major Hollywood studios, adding another layer of intrigue to the already complex case. The investigation also unveiled Crane's attempts to reach out to investigative journalists in the weeks before his death. Phone records showed multiple calls to reporters known for exposing Hollywood scandals, though none of these calls lasted more than a few minutes. One journalist, who wished to remain anonymous, revealed that Crane had mentioned having evidence of systematic corruption within the entertainment industry. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of a series of photographs in Crane's possession that appeared to document more than just his personal encounters. These images, found in a hidden compartment of his camera case, suggested he had inadvertently captured evidence of other crimes, possibly explaining why someone would want him silenced permanently. The murder scene itself began to take on new significance as forensic experts applied modern analysis techniques to the original evidence. The position of Crane's body and the precise nature of his wounds indicated the killer had military or professional training, challenging earlier theories about the crime being a crime of passion or opportunity. As the investigation continues, each new piece of evidence seems to point toward a broader conspiracy rather than a simple act of violence. The question remains: was Bob Crane's murder the result of his personal indiscretions, or was he silenced because he knew too much about the darker aspects of Hollywood's golden age? The truth may lie somewhere in the thousands of photographs and videos he left behind, waiting for technology and time to finally reveal their secrets. The case now stands as a testament to the complexities of investigating crimes within the entertainment industry, where public personas often mask private truths, and where the line between reality and performance can become dangerously blurred. As new generations of investigators continue to examine the evidence, the mystery of Bob Crane's death remains a haunting reminder that some Hollywood stories have endings too dark for the screen.